Welcome to GAF Does Lockdown, our regular show where we educate ourselves for the struggle to come. Today we're going to be talking with Carole Concha Bell. She's a Cambridge-based journalist, founding member of the Chile Solidarity Network and press coordinator for Mapuche International Link. She will tell us about the continuing struggle of the Mapuche people in Chile to defend their land. We will learn about the history of their fight and how it is connected to the environmental struggle of preventing the Chilean state and corporations from exploiting the natural resources found on Mapuche land. We will also hear the latest about how the Mapuche are resisting repression, including the ongoing hunger strike, and what people around the world can do to support the Mapuche struggle. But first, let me remind you what is GAF and how you can get involved. The Green Anti-Capitalist Front is an alliance of groups and individuals united by a belief that capitalism is one of the core causes of the environmental crisis threatening us all. And if we don't act now, the cost of that crisis will fall on the poor and powerless. If you want to get involved, you can contact one of the existing groups, which you can find in places like London, Birmingham, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Cambridge, among others. All the contact info is in our website. But also remember that GAF is a front, and as such, as long as you agree with our aims and principles, you can create your own collective or take action under the GAF banner without having to ask for permission. And finally, before we begin, I'd like to share out different struggles happening around the world and locally that you can support. First of all, I'd like to tell you about the climate justice is migrant justice protest, which is happening in London tomorrow by a coalition of climate groups who will be holding a socially distanced protest to raise awareness of the link between climate justice and migrant justice. The ecological crisis is already upon us and hitting the inhabitants of the global south first, and in the coming years it is only going to get worse. The GAF will be joining tomorrow's protest to support it, and we ask you to join it too. The meeting point is the Nelson Mandela statue in Parliament Square at 10 a.m. Next, we have the Youth for Climate Justice court case. 6 young people from Portugal are taking 33 European countries to the European Court of Human Rights for failing to do their part to avoid climate catastrophe. Their goal is to seek a legally binding decisions from the European Court of Human Rights, requiring governments in Europe to take the urgent action needed to stop the climate crisis, using the argument that the European Convention of Human Rights obliges European governments to fight climate change. While in GAF we believe the state is part of the problem and no real solution can be found working within their apparatus, we applaud the initiative as a useful precedent and a good way to raise awareness and start fruitful discussions. The young plaintiffs are being supported by the Global Legal Action Network. You can help by sharing the case on social media or donating to the fund being raised to cover the legal fees. For more information, visit youthforclimatejustice.org. All links, by the way, will be in the description of the video. Also, I would like to tell you about the International Resistance to Mining Film Festival. In solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, indigenous activists, and mining-affected communities across the globe, London Mining Network presents the International Resistance to Mining Film Festival. The films deal with the colonial legacy of internationalist activism and the lives it affects. The films will be shown at 7:30 between 21st and the 28th of September. For more info and to register, you can find the link in the description as well. Also, this year, just like the previous years, Galende is organizing an action against coal infrastructure in Germany. They will be holding a decentralized blockade in the region of Rhineland from the 23rd to the 28th of September. The Coal Extension Act will keep coal alive for another 18 years, using billions of euros. And the Galende are fighting to ensure that coal is phased out immediately and the door to a fundamental system change is open. They plan on placing themselves between the coal diggers and the threatened villages to protect them. It is to be a publicly announced blockade with a wide range of opportunities to participate. To find out more, check their Facebook page or website, which again you'll find in the description. And finally, it is with great sadness that we acknowledge the death of David Graeber yesterday. David Graeber was an American anthropologist and anarchist activist, author known for such books as The Death, the 5,000 years, where he explores the violence that lies behind all social relations based on money and calls for a wiping out of sovereign and consumer debts and bullshit jobs. Graeber also had a history of involvement in political activism since the 90s, including being a member of the Industrial Workers of the Wall and being a pivotal figure in the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2011, as well as the Global Justice Movement. He was a professor at the London School of Economics at the time of his death. He will sorely miss, rest in power. And with that out of the way, I'm going to introduce our guest today, Carole. So if you can unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carole Concha Bell. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. So I am a member of the Chilean exile community. I'm a founder of the Chile Solidarity Network, which aims to replicate the fantastic Chile Solidarity campaign of the 80s. But fast forward a few years, sadly, things haven't changed in Chile, and we're still fighting for the same injustices as 50 years ago. I also work for Mapuche International Link as a press officer, and Mapuche International Link is an NGO based in Bristol that aims to inform the public about Indigenous culture and their struggles, particularly the Mapuche people, which are located in the southern cone across Chile and Argentina.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today. It's really, really good to talk with you, and we are really looking forward to learn more about the Mapuche struggle, which I think is extremely important. And I think, maybe it's not as well known in the English-speaking world, especially. So I think it's really, really good to be able to hear more about it. So to begin with, could you, give us a bit of an introduction about who are the Mapuche people? Maybe what can you tell us about their history of resistance against, invaders of their land? Carole, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, sorry.
So sorry, my connection keeps going. So if I go quiet, I've not lost interest. I'm still here.
Okay, no worries.
I just wanted to say before I start speaking that while I'm supportive of the Mapuche cause, I'm not here to talk on their behalf. I wouldn't want to do that. I feel like those communities should speak for themselves. I'm a supporter. I know quite a bit about it because they've let, thankfully, the Mapuche community have let me in. However, I'm very mindful of not claiming to represent them because I am a white person. I'm a Chilean colonist. So I am here not to speak for them, but to speak about their struggle in the most respectful way that I can do, being a non-Mapuche person.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Thank you so much. So yeah, as I was saying, maybe if you could tell us a bit about, who are the Mapuche people and, what is their history of a struggle and resistance over, the long time they've been fighting.
Okay, I'll do a brief recap. So the Mapuche people, they are from the south of Chile and Argentina, around the Patagonia area. So their geographical boundaries don't really, they've got nothing to do with Chile or Argentina or what we know now. Their land is called Guaymapu. We know that they existed from 600 to 500 BC, so they've been there a very, very long time. Now, when the Spanish came to the land and colonized, they were never able to truly take over. They never ever really conquered the Mapuche people. They are the only indigenous group that maintained their sovereignty. Despite that, they still try very hard. There was a military invasion of Mapuche territory in 1862. This was launched by the Chilean and Argentinian state. They call this the pacification of Araucania. Araucania is the name that the Spaniards have given to the region where the Mapuches reside. And that's actually a bone of contention to this day. It's a very racist term to sort of call a Mapuche Araucanian. Yeah, the Chileans insist on doing this in textbooks. So we have this period of pacification, which basically means slaughter. Tens of thousands of Mapuche were slaughtered. Others were sent to prisoner of war extermination camps, and others were sent to Martin Garcia, which is an island located between Argentina and Uruguay, and we really don't know what happened to them. So since sort of the 1860s, the repression of the Mapuche has been ongoing. There was a slight respite during the socialist agenda period. So if we think that in 1930, they only had like 1/3 of the land that was originally theirs, during the socialist administration of Allende, some rights were restored during the agrarian reforms. And also Allende passed a law recognizing indigenous people as existing independently of their lands. And there was a promise made to restore Mapuche lands that had been usurped. But then we have the Pinochet regime, the coup of 1973. Pinochet obviously reversed these reforms. Any Mapuche that was involved in the social experiment was rounded up, tortured, murdered. Some fled the country. And one of those Mapuche exiles was Reinaldo Marichal, who is one of the founders of Mapuche International Link in Bristol. So over the period of Pinochet's rule, we have Mapuche land reduced from 10 million hectares to just 400,000 hectares. And for a people who identify with their land and believe in subsistence, that is tantamount to a genocide too. These are genocidal policies. So during and since the Pinochet regime, any attempt to reclaim land was branded as terrorism. And Pinochet, being a bureaucratic authoritarian, drafted in several laws to quash Mapuche political organization, including the 1984 Terror Law. So that
I think Carol's having technical troubles again. Let's see. Let's wait a bit for her to get back. Hopefully it won't be too long.
Hello?
Yes, you're back. You just cut off a bit. Hmm. Okay, let's wait a bit more. Oh, in the meantime, maybe I'll remind people, or I'll tell people that since recently we've been having a lot of people reach to us interested in joining GAF, we have created a guide to how would you go about that.
I'm really sorry, I dropped off the connection. It keeps kicking me out, so I don't know what you heard and what you didn't.
I think the last part was talking about the Pinochet kind of like bureaucratic regime and.
Chris?
Hello?
Oh, sorry, are you there?
Yeah, I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the 1984 Terror Act, and that has basically criminalized any Mapuche attempts to reclaim any land. And because the constitution has remained in place to today, any attempts by any Mapuche groups to recover land that belongs to them is regarded a criminal act. Hence, so many Mapuche leaders are in prison.
Mm-hmm. And so, what does the Chilean state what role does the Chilean state play in maintaining this situation, especially since the start of the democracy?
Well, democracy has been a sham, as we all know by now. We still have the laws that Pinochet enacted, and none of the supposedly socialist governments have done anything about it. In fact, Michelle Bachelet, who was supposed to be a socialist and was exiled in Germany, whose father died in prison because he was tortured, is involved in a scandal because she has actually bought land belonging to the Mapuche. Sebastián Piñera, the Chilean president, has also bought land that is considered to be stolen from the Mapuche people. Rodrigo Ubilla, who was the interior minister for both Bachelet and Piñera, has bought Mapuche land illegally. In fact, earlier this year, he lost a court case and they actually declared that stolen land. So if you think that people in government, presidents, are involved in buying and profiting from Mapuche land, you can imagine what that means for the community. Are you still there?
Yeah.
I have to test every so often because it keeps dropping. So we have a kind of symbiotic relationship between the state and the new corporations, which many people in government have shares in, and then the Mapuche are obviously on the losing side. Now, the tactics that are used against Mapuche people are various. Obviously, there's systemic racism. So we had an incident in the south of Chile recently, in Curacautín, which was dubbed Chile's Crystal Matched, where a racist mob was coordinated by a far-right group called the Association for Peace and Reconciliation. The spokesman, Gloria Naveyan, had actually encouraged violence, saying, you know, who's going to come and sort out these indios? And what had happened was that Mapuche community had gone in and occupied a council, the council building, in protest at the conditions that Mapuche political prisoners were being held in. But they got, and many people didn't understand. They criticized the Mapuche community, said, why did they go there with old people and children? Well, because they're a community and their struggle is, you know, felt by the whole community. So the Mapuche community went in, they occupied this council building, and then they were surrounded by a violent racist mob. It was basically a lynching. They broke in, they stabbed people, they set their cars on fire, they were battered, and the police, instead of controlling the situation, they colluded, they allowed it to happen, and they actually took part. So you have this collusion between the state, the security forces, and local businesses. And more sinister than that, we have a militarized unit called Commando Jungla, which I don't know if you've heard.
Hello there. Just wait for her to come back a bit. We actually did report on the incident with the lynch mob on our social media. So if you go back to our Facebook, you should be able to. We translated a brief a brief story about it. If you want to find a bit more, I don't think there's much in English otherwise available. Carole, are you back? I think
Racist policies. We have
Carole,
authoritarian.
you cut off for a bit. You were telling us about a special police commando. I think called Commando Jungla.
Yes, Commando Jungla. This was formed during the Bachelet government. I don't know how much you heard about it. This unit was trained in the Colombian jungle by American and Colombian army to deal with the so-called Mapuche problem. in a militarized way, they are responsible for the murder of Camilo Catrillanca, which happened in 2018, and it was no accident. This Commando Jungla, which is a militarized arm of the National Police Force, was created specifically to respond to land conflicts in the region. And they're still there. And what they do is they use drones to spy on community leaders. They do raids. So they come in and sweep land and burn down huts and, you know, destroy the crops and, you know, injure the animals or shoot the dogs. And that's what they're there for, to provide a militarized response to land conflict. There is no attempt at dialogue between the Chilean state and the indigenous community.
Yeah, that's absolutely horrible.
So then we move into the corporations. Now, why are they so interested in this land? You know, it's just land, right? Well, the south, where the Mapuche reside, is really rich. We have forestry, fishing, energy, and tourism, which are the key businesses that operate in the region. And so some of the names, for example, Angelini Group, Celulosa Arauco, Forestal Arauco. What does this mean? Well, it means disaster for local communities. These are people that depend on land, and yet their land has been possessed, and not just possessed for resource extraction and privatization for, you know, the Chilean economic development. They're also suffering the consequences of environmental destruction. So, for example, Blue Mar, one of the largest salmon companies, are responsible for a huge salmon escape last week. Toxic salmon that are full of antibiotics and sea lice escaping into other lakes. So that's one thing that's happened recently. We also have Mapuche communities in the Mariquina commune in Los Rios that are facing water shortages and pollution caused by the forestry industry. In fact, the INDH, which is the Instituto Nacional de Derechos Humanos, went in and inspected, and there was no drinking water for human consumption. So people are getting sick, they can't grow their crops. Also, the plantations have reached the edges of the properties of small farmers. So we're talking about the plantations of eucalyptus and pine, which once planted destroy all of the native trees and all of the native fauna in the region. You know, it's just dead after that's planted there. So it's environmentally destructive. But they also found that the pulp mills that are used by the forestry have generated so much toxic air and pollution that local people are suffering from gastrointestinal and ophthalmological problems caused by bad smells and air pollution. The people are getting sick. So the reason why this land has been taken is because it's been sold to multinationals and forestry companies. And those companies then employ local police to clear the area of Mapuche people. And, you know, this means police raids, which are violent, and they involve racially abusing the people while they're clearing it. They have beaten women, old people, children, you know, they have shot people. And then what they like to do then is then arrest community leaders on false charges. You may.
It's cutting a bit again, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think we've lost her again. Let's see if she comes back. Yeah, apologies for the technical difficulties today. Let's see. In the meantime, I'll continue doing announcements for GAF. I remind people that I think next week on the 10th of
I'm
September.
back now.
Oh,
Sorry, keep
okay.
dropping out.
No worries. Okay. Right. So you were talking about the corporations who were responsible for a lot of these land destructions and the effects it was having on Mapuche people.
That's right. So if we think that the Mapuche people are one of the largest indigenous groups in Chile, they make up 1.5 million, but they're the poorest as well. So they're operating already from a disadvantage. So we're talking about really high rates of multidimensional poverty as well. So they have no means of accessing their land, so then they're pushed into big cities to try and make their way. Then they suffer racism, discrimination, so they can't really integrate into Chilean society. Then they get pushed back to their land, and then when they're there, they're criminalized. So the criminalization of the leaders is the Chilean way of keeping any kind of Mapuche organization down. And if it's okay, I'd just like to talk a little bit about what's happening currently.
Absolutely, yeah.
So at the moment, there's been a few flashpoints in southern Chile. We had the Curacautin sort of racist incident, which arose because of the hunger strike. The hunger strike has been going on for over 100 days. It was led by Celestino Cordoba, who is a Machi. Machi is a sort of spiritual leader. He was accused of the murder of some old German people. It was a land conflict, and then this was, many years ago. The house was burnt down, and these two German people that were involved in this conflict with Mapuche people died in this terrible fire, which is obviously terrible. But with absolutely no evidence, Celestino Cordova was accused of starting this fire and of murdering these people, causing outrage, of course. These, people killing old people. So the way that it works in Chile is that you have these military courts. So the investigations conducted by public prosecutors can be kept secret for 6 months. And at the trials themselves, key evidence can be admitted in oral hearings from faceless witnesses. So somebody will just accuse you. They'll say, I saw you setting a fire, and then you'll be arrested and you'll have no legal recourse for 6 months because you don't even know who's made this claim against you. And then you're tried in a military court with these faceless witnesses. So this doubles the normal sentences for some offences because it's a military court. So there's no pre-trial release. The prosecution is able to withhold evidence from the defense for these 6 months. Defendants are convicted on testimonies given by anonymous witnesses. These witnesses appear in court behind screens, so the defendants, even the public, can't see them. And most of them are put on trial for terrorism are poor farmers and traditional leaders. Others are younger Mapuche who have lived in urban areas, studied in universities, and then go back to reorganize their communities, which is what happened with Camilo Catrillanca. He wasn't some random guy. He was involved in a land dispute. And you will, if you dig a little bit deeper to any of these cases of people turning up dead or strangled, for example, on June the 5th this year, this man called Alejandro Trequil, he was 37, he was shot dead. And there's never, nobody ever sees anything. So there's all these anonymous deaths, there's these anonymous shootings, and then there's this terrible system of these sort of kangaroo courts. So we have Celestino Cordova, who was accused of the murder of these two German landowners, and he was just simply asking for his rights under a treaty that was signed by the Chilean government, Convention 169 of the International Labour Organization, the ILO. And he was just asking to be able to serve his sentence under house arrest. Of course, the Chilean government did not give in. It's a hardline far-right government that doesn't want to be seen as giving in to terrorist demands. But Chile did ratify this convention in 2008, and they did state that they will respect the customs of indigenous people, even when executing sentences.
We've lost her again. um, yes, so in the meantime, on the 10th of September, as you know, we're going to have a reading group discussion on the subject of the commons and how they can be used as building blocks for a society beyond capitalism. And you can see the information on our website of the recommended reading list and videos, as well as the questions we will be discussing. So yeah, show up for that. Hopefully we have less technical trouble then. And let's wait. I think Carole is back. Or should be shortly. Maybe not. Jeez.
Okay, I keep dropping out. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, you were telling us that they were asking for the Chilean state to follow the international law they agreed to and allow them to finish their sentence at home, and which they haven't, but the Chilean state is refusing to do so. Are you? Oh, okay. Let's wait a little bit more.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah. So yeah. Finally, the state conceded, and Celestino has called off his particular hunger strike, but things haven't changed. So there are over 20 Mapuche community leaders, political prisoners, still on hunger strike.
What is what has the campaign? How has the campaign been received so far by the Chilean authorities, by the Chilean people, and what are the prospects that we have for it to succeed?
Well, that's a really complicated question, because you see, the Mapuche are their own people, and they are not affiliated to any political groups or any other groups. They have their own agenda, which is, to reclaim their lands, and that has nothing to do with the politics of, the constitution of Chile and things like that. So and this is a debate that I've been having with my comrades on how do we support the Mapuche struggle without appropriating their struggle for our own means, which is something that's happened before. You get left-wing people saying, well, we want to change the constitution, and look, they're treating Mapuche people bad, and we're going to add that to our catalogue of terrible things that the Chilean state has done. But that's not the point, So this is something I can't answer today. There isn't like a petition we can sign, or a hashtag we can use. This is a struggle that has been going on for a very long time, that's going to continue going on for a very long time unless the system is completely dismantled. You have entrenched interests in the land of the Mapuche. You have Benetton, for example, on the Argentinian side, that were capable of killing a man, Santiago Maldonado, our comrade, who died a couple of years ago, when he went there to support the Mapuche people. But we have like this deeply entrenched issue where we have the collusion between states, security services, and the multinationals. So it's not something that's going to be solved very quickly. It's not going to be a change of constitution, and then whoever's in charge in Chile and Argentina are going to want to give them back their land because it's worth so much. I think as people that are sympathetic to their plight, not just on a human level because they are being oppressed and because they are abused and because they suffer racism and structural discrimination in their own land. I think that what we can do is be aware of that, because they are actually the work that they propose to do, which is to defend the land, actually benefits all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly now when we're living a period of extreme climate change. And the problem is that in countries like Chile and Argentina, where there were dictatorships and where there isn't much regulation, those governments can do what they want. We had this salmon escape. Not many people know about it. We have like these wood pulps pumping out poison air. We have whole forests being decimated, and these poisonous plants being put in. What can we do? We can raise awareness, and there's not a lot of people that know about the Mapuche struggle.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people know about Brazil, but not a lot of people know about Mapuche struggle, and it's quite disheartening. I approached Survival International this week and I said, look, can I have a statement from you? And they were like, oh, well, we're talking about Brazil now. And I was like, listen, I don't care if you're talking about Brazil now. These people, they're a really large ethnic group. They're a really large indigenous and very important population as well, in terms of a model that we can all kind of embrace, because their struggle is very dignified.
Mm.
And they know they're in for the long haul. There's no quick fixes for them. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer your question, that we can do this, that, or the other. I think raising awareness about the environmental destruction, for example, calling out certain multinational companies, calling them out on their criminal behavior would be a really good way of joining a campaign. And then, some campaigns do sort of leak out into the mainstream from their communities, like
Let's wait a second for Carole to be back.
I don't know what anyone thinks about what I've just said.
Sorry. So you cut off a bit. You were saying that some campaigns do leak out into the mainstream, and then it cut off. Okay. Just a second. Carole, are you back?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, yeah. So you were telling us that some campaigns from the Mapuche people do leak out into the mainstream.
They do, and for I just want to give you one example of like well-meaning campaigns that can backfire. Like, so last month, 2 Mapuche women were found in their home hung. They were, hung. They were dead. And then, of course, everyone jumped on it, and the feminists started taking off their clothes and writing, we're all Mapuches on their chests and stuff. And then I actually got a message from a Mapuche leader, and he said, "Please, can you not talk about these deaths? We're bored of our things being used to kind of fit into other agendas." At first, I was a little bit taken aback. I thought we were helping, but we weren't, and so that made me feel that maybe we should tread more carefully into jumping to conclusions or using those things in terms of our own agendas. For example, we're fighting against climate change, but I'm not sure if they want us to use their struggle as an example of how of combating that, if you know what I mean. They don't want to be pawns in anyone's game. So I think that it's a struggle I'm having at the moment. I know all these terrible things are happening and I write about them, but then what happens next? And I think that that's something that all non-Indigenous people need to think about how we can really help those communities. And like I said earlier, I don't know if you heard, but I think that one of the things we can do is call out those multinationals that are occupying those lands, those heads of state that have bought illegal land. Perhaps that's one way of doing things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and something that the left, and especially the autonomous left, and anti-authoritarian left must learn, and keep in mind when we interact with indigenous people who are fighting, 100 years old struggle against, the invasion for like many different empires, and we cannot just come and like try to take over or use it for our own means. So yeah, I think that's really important, and yeah, we definitely in GAF support calling out and fighting against these corporations, and that's something that, given the global outreach of many of them, it can be done in a much more local level. I'm sure many of the corporations we've been talking about that have been like, that are destroying the Mapuche land, have have offices in cities near you. So that's something to keep in mind. So
Great,
even, yeah.
brilliant. Is there anything that anyone would like to ask me, or is there any part that I haven't covered properly, or you'd like to know more about, or?
I do have one more question, but yeah, if people want to start posting their questions on the chat, or wait for them to be able to ask them out loud, that'll be great. But I did wanted to ask a bit more about what. So at the end, or towards the end of last year in Chile, there was a big social uprising, el estallido social, that happened, and that made a lot of news. It was something that we followed really closely, and I was wondering what was the relationship between that uprising, that popular uprising, and the Mapuche struggle. How did it interact?
Well, there were a lot of Mapuche flags being waved about, which was
Mhm.
good to see, because the left hasn't always paid much attention to that community, and they're often left behind. So it was heartening to see that the Mapuche struggle is in the consciousness of the Chilean left and those fighting for a fairer Chile. However, I'm not sure if the change of constitution or the change of government means anything to the Mapuche communities, who are suffering
Mhm.
the same injustices now as it did 500 years ago. And that is the crux of the matter here, that their struggle isn't really linked to anything else.
Mhm.
It's an autonomous struggle. They are an
Mhm.
autonomous people with their own agenda and their own pain, and that has nothing to do with what happens to the Chileans, or within the Chilean constitution or the Argentinian constitution. It doesn't really matter. I remember a couple of years ago, I spoke to one of my Mapuche friends, and I said, "Hey, man, it's like September the 11th." And he turned around and said to me, "Every day is September the 11th for us."
Mhm.
And that shut me up, because I was like, okay, yeah. So although there's a sort of impression that the two are intertwined, I'd say that they're not.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, during socialist governments and governments that are more sympathetic to indigenous, more tolerant of their indigenous communities, things change a little bit, but that's temporary. You only have the next authoritarian government to come in and then just wipe all of
Mhm.
that slate clean again and continue oppressing. And as it happened in 1973, imagine trying to expel all the mining companies, all the forestries. What would happen then? Would we have another coup? You know, if anything too radical were to happen, if we were to expel all of these multinationals because we have a socialist government. So,
Mhm.
so while the uprising was heartening to see and exciting, especially for all of us who want to push for change, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that it's going to benefit or hinder or make any impact on the Mapuche community at all,
Yeah.
sadly.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I think, like, they've been the yeah, their fight is clearly beyond, a single government, a single corporation. It's against, for their own autonomy and against the logic of capital and state that has been imposed on them, and it's not going to be solved easily. I think that makes complete sense.
And let's not be like oblivious to racism either. I mean,
Yes.
I've grown up in a left-wing family, and they, I mean, when I returned to Chile after the blacklisting was lifted and we went back for the big return, which was a failure for me. I remember saying to my family, "Oh, I can't wait to go and meet the Mapuche." I was about 17, and they said, "What do you want to go and meet those Indians for? They're dirty."
Mm.
And I'm from a left-wing family, so you know, just because people are left-wing doesn't mean they identify with the Mapuche struggle, understand it, or even support it, because
Mm.
they want their own state. They're not interested in the Chilean constitution or having
Mm.
a place within Chilean parliament. They want their land back, and they want
Mm.
the Kingdom of Patagonia. They want Guajmapu, which is stretching across the geographical boundaries that we recognize. And that is why the Mapuche struggle is so threatening.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's the reason that I personally like, and I think many others in GAF find it so important, because yeah, it's something that is not that it challenges many of the institutions, many of the notions that or that society has us given, the state of borders, of
Sure.
all these things. And and I think that's why it's, one of the reasons why it's so important, other that because of the horrible treatment they've been given.
Even understanding their reasons for the land, it's not because they want to build houses on their land. They are
Mm.
spiritually connected to their land. Their land is
Mm.
their religion. It's not a thing. It's not something to, it's not a commodity. And
Mm.
even well-meaning white people will not understand that. They will not
Yeah.
understand the connection between land and spirituality. And that's why this struggle is rather abstract in a sense.
Mm. Yeah.
So
But I
it's
think.
abstract to us because of
Mhm.
the values that we have, even if we are left-wing or
Sure.
radical.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that makes complete sense. So yeah, I think, I don't know if there's any more questions in the chat, that people have. Hopefully we have a few. But yeah, in the meantime, I do want to thank you a lot, Carole, for bringing all of this to us. And I think it's very important for people to like know about all of this. Um, and yeah, hopefully people will be able to follow it closely and find ways to show real solidarity with the Mapuche people beyond just using them for purposes or ignoring them, as a lot of the left has done so far.
Yeah, and I think that's why there is suspicion,
Mm.
you know, and I think we need to respect their autonomy and their feeling of
Mm.
otherness, because they are another,
Mm.
and I think that it's very difficult for us to get our head around
Mm.
their worldview, because it's completely different. And it's been a learning curve for me. For many
Mm.
years I wanted to get involved. I'd always known about them, and it took me 10 years or plus, to even be able to provide some sort of assistance, which is to try and get that story out into the media,
Mm.
which is quite difficult.
Sure.
So I will let you. I mean, what I can do is keep in contact. Anything that does arise from the community that they want help with, any investigations that I come, because I'm now writing about the corporations that are in that land, so I'll pass on that information. And we can all think of ways of how we can, because it's obviously in the Mapuche are one community, but there's all kinds of
Mm.
indigenous communities all around the world being impacted by these greedy multinationals. And so, the whole issue about how we help them, uh, being non-indigenous, is actually really important.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I can't remember the number, but I think a huge amount of the world's biodiversity is actually protected by indigenous peoples around the world, and that's something that is, yeah, we need to realize and put in the center of our environmental struggle if we really want to be able to to win this fight to against the destruction of our environment.
I think the main point here is the criminalization of their
Mhm.
struggle. That is the most toxic element of the whole thing.
Mm.
Criminalization of their struggle. You know, it has been made a criminal act for them to try and restitute their land. You know, anytime they're in prison, it's never because they've never hurt anyone. They don't. I mean, obviously there is one or two young anarchists.
Sikurov again. Uh, just as he was saying something about anarchists. So, state repression already striking again. But yeah, in the meantime, if people want to write questions on the chat, hopefully she'll be able to answer them once he gets back. Yeah, I think, yes, she should be back in a few seconds. Carole, are you there?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry, it keeps cutting out.
No worries.
I'm really sorry. It's making me nervous as well. So thank you so much for inviting me along, despite all these things, technical issues that happen, because I feel like they, and I think the word help is also, I chastise myself for using that. It's providing solidarity, not help. But I think that these are people that will need our solidarity.
We have a comment more than a question, I think, from someone in the chat. So I'm going to read it out loud. I hope she doesn't mind. Saying this as a native Mexican, like the whole of Abya Yala, the colonized mentality, education and culture and borders, what needs to change, and it won't with a constitution. Or peoples won't stop being discriminated, and racism is rifled everywhere. Flying a flag is not changing the situation. I relate this to all the indigenous resistance in the continent, including the Zapatistas. Colonization has never stopped. Even the left's idea of help hasn't helped, I think, either.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's a sentiment that I've been hearing from the communities in Chile and Argentina as well. I totally agree. I think we'll never be able to really provide the solidarity unless we take on their worldview and understand that this stretches further beyond any personal struggles we may have suffered. As the offspring of colonialists, it's a completely different struggle with a different set of rules, with different priorities, and that needs to be respected. And yet again, I think it needs to come from the bottom up. Not us telling them this is what we're going to do for you, but saying how can we be at your service? What can we do?
Yeah, and I think that is a challenge, for all of us who talk about, autonomy, gaining capacity for self-governance, and all these things. We are never going to be able to truly realize that if we cannot recognize and grant the autonomy of other peoples in their own struggle, in their own fights, and in their own lives, and that means that we cannot push our priorities on them.
That's right. Well, the struggle goes on. Every day there's new repression. Every day a little bit of land is taken away, new humiliations, another leader taken in, another mysterious death, somebody else found hanged, but it's been happening for so many years. So
yeah,
I think call out culture, awareness, cultivating awareness, and that's and listening really.
Definitely. And yeah, we've started trying to translate some of the stuff. We've been hearing about it. We actually translated a bit of news when the racist attack happened a few weeks ago, and hopefully we'll be able to continue doing that. And yeah, and whatever we can get from from you or the Mapuche International Link or the Chile Solidarity Network, we'll try to share as well so other people can find as well.
Sure. I mean, we're you know, I've written quite a few pieces, so I can send them to you. I wrote about the attack. And I'm about to release an article about corporations in the region. So we'll just keep exchanging information, and let me know if there's anything I can do. Have a look on the Mapuche International Link website. We regularly post press releases and articles, or link to articles I've written in this press. But you know, my job as a press officer is to try and force the mainstream to pay attention, and to try and educate as much as possible, and just try and provide a voice, even though it's not my place. You know, I would have preferred if a Mapuche person had spoken instead of me. But there's very few Mapuche people in the UK. Well, the few that were here returned during the return in the 1990s. So there's very few people of Mapuche origin here. But I would always give way to them first to speak, and use me as a last resort.
So yeah, hopefully people now have a better idea of the Mapuche struggle and why it's important to us, you know, as environmentalists, as leftists, but also, you know, as, I guess, just people who care for the dignity and the rights of human beings. And yeah, hopefully you'll have some ideas of how to learn more through all the resources that Carole has been talking about, and hopefully also what of actions you might take in the future in solidarity. So yeah, I think we haven't had any questions or comments in the chat. So I think, you know, we've been abusing your internet connection for long enough.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I will keep you updated.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. It has been really wonderful. Yeah, for the people listening in, a couple of announcements for regarding GAF. So as I was saying before, on the 3rd of September, we are having another reading group discussion. This time, the subject is the commons and how they can be used as building blocks for a society beyond capitalism. You can visit our website for the list of recommended readings and videos and the questions we will be discussing. And also, GAF has a mailing list that we use to send notifications for events we are planning, or just to keep you updated on what we are doing. And hopefully, maybe we could even like send any updates, any news that we get about the Mapuche situation as well. And if you want to sign up, you please send us an email to greenanticapitalistfront@riseup.net, or use the sign up button on the homepage of our website, which is greenanticapitalist.org. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for us today. Yeah, thanks so much again to Carole for being here and talking with us. It's been really, really wonderful talking with you. And yeah, thank you for everyone listening in, and we hope to see you soon. And again, one reminder that GAF is a front, is a banner that you can take yourself if you want to organize. So if you can join one of the existing groups, but you can also create your own GAF collective or take actions under GAF. If you just follow our aims and principles, we have now a guide on our website on how you can do that. If you need some ideas, but no one's in charge. You can just follow your initiative. And with all of that said, thank you so much, everyone. We hope to see you soon, and keep the solidarity going. Goodbye, everyone.